Hi, I'm Hale.
And I'm Alex, and today we're going to do a book battle on John Proctor from the Crucible.
So if you don't know, The Crucible is a play by Arthur Miller, and we had to read it for school. Fun, I know. But it kind of draws a contrast to the Red Scare from... what year was that?
It's like the 50s, it's McCarthyism, so during the Cold War.
Yes, so it draws a comparison to that and then the Salem witch trials, just to give you a little bit of background. Yeah. But if you haven't read the book yet, you probably won't understand this video.
Yeah, so I don't recommend watching also because we're going to spoil the end.
Yes,
even though
that
he
too.
was a real person, so you could Google him and find out the end.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about two things. First of which is going to be just him, like, as a character.
Okay, so John Proctor as a character, I kind of enjoyed. I feel like he was more... The way Arthur Miller phrased it is that he obviously didn't know the dialogue and things between the character, like between the people, because they were real people. So, like, he kind of felt like a real person, and, like, who he was seemed... He seemed relatable in a sense of the time, which was the 1600s in Salem, Massachusetts, so it's not relatable, but relatable. So as a book character, he's not a bad person, like, as a character.
So, I agree that, like, he wasn't a bad character. However, there were other characters who I would have rather have been the main character. Namely, Abigail. Her perspective would have been very interesting for the whole issue and stuff, because she was the one who was blaming all these people, essentially, and she was pretty much leading these witch accusations. So I thought that was interesting, and I feel like she was really, really villainized in the novel, where I feel like it would have been much more interesting to see her perspective on it. And in a way, too, that could have drawn an interesting perspective on McCarthyism, because you could have gotten some of the viewpoints of people who were, like, subjects of it and who believed in it in a way, which I thought would have been very interesting as well. So I think that was more my issue with him being the main character, is because I felt that there were so many other characters who would have been much more interesting to read about. Whereas, like, John, gotta be honest, I really didn't care about him. Even Elizabeth, I would have rather have read her story and stuff, but John, he committed adultery. Good for him. Other than that, I really don't care. He didn't seem like that important, other than the fact that he committed adultery and was, like, getting over his sin. But, like, I'm sorry. You just, like, he didn't excite me as a main character. I looked at other characters and I was like, I want to know your story, but I never got their stories.
I honestly didn't feel like he was the main character until Act 3, which was the trial.
Yeah.
So, as a character, he was kind of weak until he became the main character in the third act and the fourth.
Yeah.
So, I didn't even recognize that he was the main character.
Yeah, which I didn't like that, but, like, everywhere you look, like, he's the main character.
Yeah.
Like, he's cited as the main character and stuff.
Yeah.
So.
He's cited as, like, the protagonist hero, and I'm not really sure he's a hero.
No.
But so the next part is John's final decision. Well, this is the big spoiler if you haven't, Googled, if you haven't Googled John Proctor before, like, which I wouldn't have if you haven't picked up the Crucible. So John gets accused of witchcraft by Abigail and Mary. It's both of them, and so he is thrown into prison and then is set to be hanged. And so after that, they decide that maybe he can be talked to into just confessing that he was a witch and, like, that he can be saved. And John decides instead to leave his pregnant wife, Elizabeth, who is set to be hanged but is pregnant, so, like, she has the baby, and then she's supposed to be hanged, but this kind of ends the witch trials. He decides to leave her and instead not commit to the lie.
So I personally found this ending to be, like, really, really unsatisfying, because I had so many questions at the end that just never got answered. And yeah, I could have Googled them, but, like, that wasn't the book. Like, the play had its own course of action and stuff, and it was written the way Arthur Miller wrote it and stuff. Like, Googling it wouldn't have sufficed. It just wouldn't have sufficed in my head and stuff. But I just, like, was annoyed that John, like, left Elizabeth after, like, while she was pregnant and stuff, because I found it to be, like, really selfish and all. Like, I get that, like, he felt like he needed to forgive his sins and stuff, and then he was like, I have to die in order to forgive my sins. Which, like, no, you don't. You just gotta forgive yourself, and that's all that matters. Granted, like, I was also really pissed because he committed adultery, and I'm, like, so against that. Like, so against that. Like, I think that was one of the biggest problems I had with him, was that he was, like, he committed adultery, and, like, I was expected to like him as a main character, and I was like, I can't do this. Like, I'm sorry. But, like, and, like, he leaves Elizabeth So basically for a second time, since he already cheated on her, and now he's just going to go to the gallows. Like, have fun, honey. Hope you don't die at the gallows like in a year. So he leaves her alone with their children, with another child on the way. She has nothing to support herself. She might die in a couple months. Who knows? No one really knows, but he's just going to the gallows in order to forgive himself. I'm done.
Okay, so the way we did this play in class is we actually did it as a play, and for the last 2 acts I played John Proctor as well as another character because I did that to myself. It was actually really enjoyable to have to talk to myself a lot. But as I played John Proctor, it was easy to sympathize with him because I was uttering his words. And while I kind of didn't really think about the adultery, like that wasn't like the main point on my mind. It was more like what he was doing, and like I understand the adultery point and I don't think that's right, and I think what he did is wrong. But I think that last moment when he's talking to Elizabeth and he's trying to sign his name and he literally cannot get over the paper because he thinks it's so morally corrupt of him to sign over his name was so powerful to me because my teacher was actually playing Judge Danforth and I was John Proctor, and I was basically yelling at my teacher saying I can't give over my name, and that whole like paragraph monologue type thing where he says because it's my name, it's the only one I'll have in my life. That was so powerful to me in such a like poignant moment that I just like kind of grasped onto that and like sympathized with John Proctor at that point because like he couldn't face the idea of lying about the witchcraft after he's lied about so much that he then decided to die instead of accept that sin as lying. And even though it's sad that he left Elizabeth was happy kind of with his choice because she said he has his goodness now. I won't take that from him. So it was like depressing but also like a good moment because like I just feel like John Proctor had this moment where he was finally like clear of his sins, and that was his way of forgiving himself for what he had done with both the adultery and then almost potentially confessing to the witchcraft, which he didn't in the end.
So apparently I'm a horrible person. Like the whole time that that monologue was happening, I was like, get over yourself. I was like, ugh. It just made me mad.
I think I might have been more like that if I wasn't playing John Proctor.
Yeah, I was just
but
mad
I was
because
John
I was
Proctor.
like, he was like, it was such a big deal that he was lying, and I was like, but apparently it wasn't a big deal when you're committing adultery.
Yes, whatever.
Lying, adultery, apparently John's mind it's like lying, but like, it should be adultery. Oh man.
Yeah, I feel like it would have been different if I wasn't John Proctor for the trial scene and then his execution.
I was Mary Warren. I was a two-timing snake.
I was also Paris in the beginning. I was Giles in the middle. I was Haythorne and Proctor, and then I was Proctor and oh my god, I was Paris again. Nice. So I was like all the characters. I was like, hey guys.
You were everyone.
But I never played a woman.
Interesting. The book was good though. Go read
the book was really good. I highly recommend the book, and
yeah.
It was really enjoyable as a play as we did it, but I also think it would be enjoyable just to read.
Yeah, it really depends on who you're doing the play with. Because my class is really unenthusiastic about everything. Granted, it's probably because we're period 1, but I don't know. Our play was super boring. Like every day I wanted to go die.
We were pretty entertaining. A girl in my class was actually fairly entertaining because she was so monotone when she said her lines. Like it was like a big joke, and she had like 3 lines, so it was like entertaining to do.
Yeah, not so much. Yeah. So I hope you guys liked this book battle. We're probably going to do some more in the future as we come across more books, but we'll keep you updated. Yeah. But for now, that's it. Bye.